We change the world one family at a time. We help you find stability.
Welcome to Marriage Panacea. I am Nancy Oblete, your host, and also the head coach of Panacea Ville International, the organization that brings to you this podcast. Panacea Ville International is an organization dedicated to helping couples within their first decade and also engaged couples to build the fundamental principles they need to have and sustain a happy marriage for a lifetime of love. In this podcast, we share fundamental principles through stories. Most of these stories are true stories from my experience, from people I've worked with that I have permission to share, stories from books, and sometimes from social media. Like John Mason said, life is too short to experience everything yourself. So yes, experience is the best teacher, but it doesn't have to be your experience. It can be the experience of others that you glean wisdom from.
Oh, yeah. It's never late to start again. Your love is meant to last.
Sitting by my side in my counseling room during a session was this man and his wife. And as we talked about domestic violence. And the man said to me, he said, I stopped beating my wife 3 years ago. And I said, wow, can you tell me? I want to know. I'm intrigued. What happened? Why did you stop hitting your wife? And he said that day they were having a big fight. The wife said some things and he was so angry that he turned and hit her. And without realizing it, he hit her on her forehead. She had a tear on her forehead and blood began to gush. So they rushed her to the hospital and she was given 3 stitches to stop the bleeding. He said the moment he saw that, it hit him so deep, and he resolved from that day never to touch his wife again. So I said this story to continue our conversation from last week about domestic violence. There are 2 kinds of domestic violence as identified by researcher Dr. John Gottman and his team. They say one is situational domestic violence and the other one is characterological domestic violence. So situational domestic violence is usually domestic violence that arises from the inability of partners to control their temper during a fight. It is often predictable. It happens during predictable times, like when they are really fighting and everybody is becoming aggravated and all. And then there's a possibility that the wife would be the first to lift up her hand and slap the husband in the process. Then also other characteristics of situational domestic violence is that those kind of violence is almost like a fight. Both partners hit each other or they go at each other. Then there is very minimal physical injury. Situational domestic violence can be started by either of the partners, either the man or the woman. Most of the time the both of them are involved. Their level of involvement may be different. One partner may use other forms of abuse, verbal abuse and others, to aggravate the other partner or refuse to keep quiet, and then the other person gets angry and possibly uses their fist to regain control. So it can be either way, but it's predictable. It happens during heightened states of anger. Now, most of the time with this kind of domestic violence, the partners will probably need to go for counseling because the both of them are involved in the anger that is causing the problem. So the both of them may need to go for anger management and therapy and all that. And as they learn, they will be able to self-regulate and regulate each other as partners. They learn to calm themselves and calm their partners as they get into fight. They learn the signals when their partners are almost getting physiologically aroused to the point that they begin to get physical, and learn what to do for self and for the other. So it's a co-regulation thing they learn, and then the violence eventually stops. So like the story with this man, even though they didn't have that kind of experience, but because but then a significant thing happened when he saw his wife with that injury, with the blood gushing out, how he had to rush her to the hospital and everything. It just sent a signal to his brain that said, you know what, no matter what the problem is, we will never use violent means to solve it again. So that was a one-time solution. For some people, they may need to go through counseling to get to that point, and then they can handle that domestic violence at that level because it's situational. It only happens in heightened angry states, and once they can control anger, manage anger, know what to do when they are in very aggravated states, then they can put an end to this form of domestic violence. So not every domestic violence automatically becomes life threatening. And of course, this is not a justification for any form of violence. No matter how mild a violence is violence and should be dealt with accordingly. That is why I recommend that if couples are in this place, they get the help they need, walk through that violence, and then continue to experience joy and peace and harmony in their relationship. So no violence is tolerated. Situational domestic violence is milder in its physical effect to the people, but it still hurts the marriage deeply and therefore should be tackled. One other significant characteristic of situational domestic violence is that it is predictable. The partners can begin to predict when it is likely to happen, and therefore they can stop it. This is the kind of domestic violence that they say, oh, it's the wife that pushed the man that far that he said what he said because she couldn't control her words. So if she learns to control how much she says, and the man also learns to self-soothe when angry, then that situation will not happen. And of course, it's vice versa because it can be the other way round. So next week, I'll be talking about characterological domestic violence. And then I also hope to provide or suggest a working framework if you or anyone you know or love is suffering from domestic violence.
Your love is meant to last a lifetime. If you are willing, then we can.
Thank you for listening to today's show. Do endeavor to let us know your thoughts about the show. If you have any questions, comments, or you even have topics that you want us to treat in our subsequent episodes, we'll be glad to hear from you. Do leave us a comment here, or you can send me a private email using the email address nancy@panaceacauses.com. nancy@panaceacauses.com. Also ensure to follow us on our social media handles, the details of which are available right here on this page. Hope to connect with you again next week. Bye bye.